When the moon is high and the stars are bright, gather round, it's Halloween night. Cozy up, friends, for some spooky delight, swinging through the Halloween night.
Good evening, my fellow creatures of the night. You're tuned in to WHLW Spooky Radio, where the eerie meets the extraordinary. I'm your host, Jack Lantern, and you found yourself in the heart of the Haunted Harmony Hours, where every note sends a shiver down your spine and every tale leaves you trembling with delight.
Ghosts and goblins, all in fun, with a vintage swing, the night's begun. Tap your feet and join the fright in our swinging Halloween night.
Tonight, my dear ghouls and goblins, we're diving deep into the dark, twisted world of the rich and ruthless, those ghoulish millionaires who haunt the high-rises and dine on the despair of the less fortunate. We've got a chilling lineup of songs and stories to keep your bones rattling and your heart pounding. Now gather round as I give you a glimpse of what's in store for tonight's spine-tingling show. We're kicking things off with a story set to song, the tragic tale of the millionaire's wife. Once the queen of the high life, she now lies in a forgotten, unnamed grave thanks to her cold-hearted ex-husband, a fate so grim it's almost poetic. Next, we'll take you on a wild ride through the city with a tune about millionaires who stalk the streets like wild animals, leaving chaos in their wake. And if you think that's chilling, just wait until you hear about the ghoulish children who do their father's bidding. Ghouls in training, if you will. But that's not all. We've got two blood-curdling stories that'll have you questioning just how far some will go to satisfy their hunger for power. Plus, a very special guest, one of the most ruthless ghouls in the financial world, will be joining us to share some truly ghoulish business tips. It's an evening of chills, thrills, and maybe a few shivers down your spine. So whether you're curled up in your crypt or taking a midnight stroll through the cemetery, stay with us. Spooky Radio's just getting started, and we're about to serve up a night you won't soon forget. And now, to begin our journey into the heart of darkness, here's the tragic ballad of the millionaire's wife. Sit back, relax, and let the shadows take hold.
In a mansion grand high on the hill, she lived a life that would fit the bill. Among riches, found still, but there was more to see. Oh, the life that she once had, diamonds, pearls, and gold, it wasn't bad. But the story turned quite sad when buried with no name. In an unnamed grave she lies, while the world believes his lies. In a silent grave she cries a tale of cold goodbyes. In an unnamed grave she lies, while the world believes his lies. In a silent grave she cries a tale of cold goodbyes. Oh, she'll never find her peace in that place where it dreams the seas. First ghost wails in the night, first seeing the cruel daylight. In an unnamed grave she lies, while the world believes his lies. In a silent grave she cries a tale of cold goodbyes.
Ah, what a tragic tune. The tale of the millionaire's wife Once draped in jewels and luxury, now lies forgotten beneath the earth. Her final resting place is cold and unfeeling as the man who put her there. Now, I don't know about you, but if I had all the wealth in the world, I'd make sure my eternal resting spot was nothing short of magnificent. Let's say, if I were a millionaire, where would I want to spend eternity? Well, first on my list would be a grand mausoleum atop a misty hill in Transylvania, because who wouldn't want to be neighbors with the Count himself? Next, how about a crypt beneath a crumbling castle in Scotland? A place where the howling wind and the sound of the crashing waves would keep me company. And finally, for a truly spooky twist, I'd love to be buried in the heart of a haunted forest, where the trees whisper secrets and the moonlight never quite reaches the ground. That's a fitting end for someone like me, don't you think? But enough about my afterlife ambitions. It's time to turn up the tempo and take a wild ride through the city streets where the millionaires roam like wild beasts. This next song is a jazzy number that captures the cutthroat world of high finance and low morals. Here's Millionaires Wild in the City.
Flashing their diamonds, they're willing. Endless parades are so chilling, crushing folks with every call. Midnight, they're out, no forgiving. Golden Tower, he's living. Thieves on the green, is all. Millionaires wild in the city, living without any fee. Hands full of gold, hungry eyes. No one escapes their demise. Slinks in the night, he will crawl. Scamming and scheming every minute. If there's a buck, he's in it. Devours the hope of us all. Millionaires wild in the city, living without any fear. And cold as a snake, selling their souls for a stake. City, living without any pity.
Ah, yes. Nothing like the sound of millionaires on the loose, turning the city into their playground, scheming, scamming, and living large. It's a wild world out there, my friends, and only the ghoulish survive. Now, I hope you've enjoyed our musical journey so far, but the night is young, and we've only just begun. Up next, we're stepping into the world of high society, where whispers and secrets run deeper than any bank vault. Our next tale is about a woman who once lived the high life, only to find herself buried in a grave as cold as her ex-husband's heart. Sound familiar? The chilling story of the socialites and their gossip about poor Helen is coming right up. But first, let's take a short break. Don't wander too far. Spooky Radio will be back in a flash.
Have you ever worried about what might happen to your soul after you've made a deal with the devil? Well, worry no more. With Soul Safe Insurance, you can rest easy knowing that your afterlife is secure, no matter what bargains you've struck. Our specially tailored plans cover everything from Faustian pacts to unfortunate hauntings. Protect your eternal soul with Soul Safe, because peace of mind shouldn't end at the grave. Remember, folks, in the game of life and death, it's better to be safe than sorry.
Soul Safe Insurance, your spirit's best defense. Keep the demons at bay and live another day.
Soul Safe Insurance, the only insurance that follows you to the other side.
And we're back, you spooky souls tuned into WHLW, where the eerie and the eerie mingle in the night. If you've been with us from the start, you know we've been weaving a web of ghoulish tales and tunes that will send shivers right down your spine. But now it's time to dip our toes into a story that will make you think twice about the lives of the rich and powerful. It's not all glitz and glamour, you know. Sometimes the price of luxury is paid in sorrow, secrets, and a cold, unmarked grave. Tonight, we've got a tale whispered in the highest circles of society where fortunes are made and lives can be lost without so much as a second thought. This is the story of a woman named Helen, once a queen of Manhattan's elite, now nothing more than a sad memory buried deep in the ground. But how did she end up there? And why do the whispers of her fate still echo through the halls of New York's finest? Let's find out, shall we?
In the dim, opulent lounge of a private Manhattan club, two socialites recline on plush sofas, their voices low, their words dripping with venomous curiosity. The air is thick with the scent of expensive perfume and old money, the soft glow of chandeliers casting long shadows that seem to flicker with each hushed breath. The scene is set in a world of luxury, where fortunes are made and lost over whispered words and shared secrets. Tonight, the topic of conversation is a woman named Helen, a once powerful figure who now resides in the shadowy recesses of her former friends' memories. Veronica, a woman who has mastered the art of the idle, malicious gossip, stirs her martini lazily. "You know," she begins, her voice a careful blend of pity and disdain, "I was just thinking about poor Helen. Can you imagine? Falling down that staircase in her penthouse? What a way to go." The other socialite, Evelyn, leans in slightly, a smirk playing at the corners of her perfectly painted lips. "Oh, darling," she replies, "are we really calling it a fall? Those stairs were practically vertical, and you know how she loved to flaunt them, always going on about the architectural marvel she had installed. It was almost like she was daring someone to push her." Veronica's eyes gleam with the thrill of speculation. "I wouldn't be surprised if someone did. She wasn't exactly beloved after the divorce. Charles certainly didn't waste any time moving on, did he? And those children, like vultures, all of them just waiting for the old bird to croak so they could swoop in and pick the carcass clean." Evelyn chuckles darkly. "Well, Helen did have her share of admirers and enemies. You know how it is in our circles. One day you're the queen bee, the next you're yesterday's news. But still, that staircase..." She shudders theatrically, as if the very thought of it sends chills down her spine. "Gives me the creeps just thinking about it. Can you imagine her last moments? That realization as she tumbled down?" Veronica takes a slow sip of her drink, her voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. "And then to be buried like that, on a golf course of all places. No grand mausoleum, no lavish tomb, just a lonely, unmarked plot. Can you believe it? Charles always did have a cruel streak, but that was something else." Evelyn's smirk widens. "Oh, it was brilliant in its own way. Turned the whole thing into a tax scheme, didn't he? The man's as ghoulish as they come. And the kids, no better. Cold, all of them. Not even a proper funeral, just shoved her in the ground like an inconvenience." Veronica sighs, her tone laced with mock sympathy. "Poor thing is probably horrified in her grave. You know, they say people hear crying all over that golf course now. Isn't that horrific? I would be crying non-stop too if my family did that to me. Not that I think they wouldn't." Her voice trails off, the thought lingering uncomfortably in the air, as if the shadows themselves have grown darker around them. For a moment, Veronica's usually sharp mind seems to dull with the weight of her own unspoken fears. But she quickly shakes it off with a nervous laugh, the fleeting vulnerability replaced by her usual icy demeanour. Evelyn grins wickedly. "Oh, darling, don't be so morose. It's all part of the game, isn't it? We're all just one misstep away from being the next headline. I'd watch my step if I were you, especially on any grand staircases." Their laughter rings out in the darkened room, but there's an edge to it, a nervousness that clings to the sound like a ghostly echo. As they finish their drinks and prepare to leave, A moment of silence falls between them, heavy with the unspoken understanding of their shared fate. Veronica glances around the dimly lit lounge, suddenly feeling the weight of the shadows pressing in. Evelyn catches her eye and gives a knowing look, her voice soft, almost to herself, as she murmurs, "You know, in this world, you're only as good as your last husband." The line hangs in the air, heavy and foreboding. They exchange uneasy glances before offering each other forced smiles. The door to the lounge opens, and the light from the hallway floods in, but it does nothing to dispel the chill that has settled over them. And so, they step out into the bright, bustling city, leaving behind the whispered secrets and the chilling reminder that in their world, even the most glamorous lives can end in darkness.
Poor Helen. Once the toast of the town, now just another ghost in the city that never sleeps. It just goes to show, my friends, that in the end, the high life can come crashing down, sometimes literally. And those who were once your closest allies might just be the ones digging your grave, a cautionary tale indeed. But let's not dwell too long on the melancholy, for we've got more macabre merriment in store. Our next tune takes us straight to Halloween night, where the offspring of the wealthy and wicked take to the streets, not with bags for candy, but with something far more sinister in mind. Here's Ghoulies on Halloween to keep that spooky spirit alive.
Ghoulies' sons and daughters dance in the moonlight's glow, spreading chaos and laughter with every place they go. Father says go steal and scheme, they're a ghoulie troop, you know. Scheming through the night, terror's pure delight. In the shadows they're unseen, ghoulies on Halloween. Creeping through old graveyards, setting spirits free. Chaotic echoes in the dark, it's ghoulish revelry. Steaming through the night, terror's pure delight. In the shadows they're unseen, ghoulies on Halloween. Father's voice, a chill in the breeze, whispers dark, commands with ease. Scheming through the night, terror's pure delight. In the shadows they're unseen, ghoulies on Halloween.
Oh, those little rascals, huh? Just when you thought Halloween couldn't get any creepier, along come the Ghoulies, ready to remind us that even the kids of the rich and powerful can have a taste for the, unconventional. What a tune, right? Makes you wonder what they'll be up to next year. Speaking of Ghoulish Millionaires, this song got me thinking about my top 3 millionaire ghouls from life or fiction. First up, we've got Ebenezer Scrooge. Before his ghostly visitors, of course, the guy was practically a ghoul in human skin, hoarding every penny while letting everyone else suffer in the cold. Second on the list, Howard Hughes, a real-life recluse whose wealth couldn't save him from spiraling into madness, surrounded by jars of his own creations. And finally, let's not forget the infamous Count Dracula. Sure, he's a count, but he had a treasure trove stashed away somewhere, and let's face it, living forever to hoard your riches and feast on the living, that's a ghoul's dream come true. Now, we've had some ghoulish characters tonight, but none as real as the one joining us after the break. We've got a very special guest, someone who's made a fortune in ways most wouldn't dare to imagine. He's not just your average millionaire. He's a ghoulish millionaire. And trust me, you won't want to miss the ruthless business tips he's got up his sleeve. Who knows, maybe he'll teach us all a thing or two about making a killing, financially speaking, of course. But first, we're going to take a quick break, so don't go anywhere. My little night owls, Spooky Radio will be right back with Haunted Harmony Hours after this.
Looking for the perfect way to leave a lasting impression? Eternity Elegance Coffins offer unparalleled style and comfort for your final rest. Handcrafted with the finest materials, our coffins are designed to make your eternal slumber as luxurious as life itself. From mahogany to marble, our custom designs cater to the tastes of the most discerning individuals. With Eternity Elegance, you'll rest in peace knowing that even in the afterlife, you're the talk of the town.
Eternity Elegance, where style meets the end. Rest in peace with class, and set a lasting trend. Pause for effect.
Eternity Elegance Coffins, because the last thing they'll see should be a reflection of your impeccable taste.
Welcome back, Night Owls, and you're listening to Spooky Radio WHLW, where the vibes are eerie and the tales are downright terrifying. Now, folks, hold on to your hats, or should I say your heads, because we have a very special guest joining us tonight. He's a man of wealth, power, and a particularly ghoulish reputation. His name is whispered in the darkest corners of the business world, and his top 3 tips for success might just chill you to the bone. Please welcome the one and only Victor Grimwald.
Good evening, Jack. It's a pleasure to be here, though I must say this feels more like a boardroom full of ghosts than a radio station, and I like it that way.
Glad to hear it, Victor. Now, you've got a bit of a reputation for, let's just say, unconventional business practices. So tell us, what's your secret to staying on top even when your competitors are 6 feet under?
Ah, Jack, it's all about seeing opportunity in the shadows. My first tip for our dear listeners, always invest in despair. When people are at their lowest, that's when you can scoop up assets for a pittance. I've made fortunes by buying up failing companies, particularly those on the brink of ruin, or something worse.
I suppose that explains why they call you the Reaper of Wall Street. And what's tip number 2, Mr. Grimwald? Something a little more hands-on?
Indeed, Jack. My second tip, keep your enemies close and your accomplices even closer. You'd be amazed at how a bit of leverage, or shall we say blackmail, can ensure loyalty. After all, what's a little dirt on your hands when you're digging someone else's grave?
Ha, I hope you're not talking literally, Victor, or are you?
Let's just say, Jack, that a well-placed favor can work wonders, whether in life or after it. Which brings me to my final tip. Never underestimate the power of legacy. When you pass on, make sure you leave behind more than just wealth. Leave fear. It's a currency that appreciates long after you're gone.
Chilling stuff, Victor, truly. Now, let's dive into some questions from our listeners, shall we? I'm sure they're dying to hear what you have to say, literally or otherwise.
By all means, Jack. Let's hear what the masses have on their minds.
All right, first up, we have a question from Veronica in Salem. She asks, Mr. Grimwald, how do you protect yourself from being haunted by spirits of those you've, let's say, outmaneuvered?
Ah, a smart question, Veronica. The trick is to make the spirits work for you. When I let go of someone, I make sure to bind them to an object, a pen they signed their life away with, a deed to a cursed property. As long as they're tethered to something, they can't stray too far. And if they do come back to haunt you, well, just make them an offer they can't refuse.
Sounds like you're a ghost's best friend. Or worst enemy? Our next question is from Jerry in New Orleans. He wants to know, how do you choose the right ghost for a spooky mission?
Jerry, it's all about knowing what motivates the spirit. A vengeful ghost is great for scaring off rivals, but for something more subtle, like influencing a business deal, you might want a ghost who's more persuasive in life, a silver-tongued devil, if you will. Always match the ghost to the task, and you'll find the results to die for.
Brilliant, Victor, just brilliant. And our final question comes from Denise in Detroit. She asks, is there a way to break free if you find yourself under a ghost's influence?
Denise, breaking free from a ghost's grip is tricky. But here's a little secret. Ghosts feed on guilt. If you can rid yourself of that, you starve them of their power. But beware, no one truly escapes their past. Sometimes it's best to embrace your darkness rather than run from it.
Wise words from a man who knows a thing or two about darkness. Thank you, Victor Grimwald, for sharing your ghoulish wisdom with us tonight.
The pleasure was all mine, Jack. Just remember, if you ever need a helping hand in the business world, you know where to find me.
I'll keep that in mind and maybe sleep with one eye open. Folks, that was Victor Grimwald, a man who's made a fortune in both life and death. Don't forget to subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and tell your friends about Spooky Radio. Now, before we dive into our next story, The Dinner, we're going to take a short break. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss what's coming up next.
Are you hosting a dinner party that's to die for? Want to impress your guests with a feast they'll never forget? Introducing Grimwald's Gourmet Ghoul Treats, exquisite handcrafted delicacies made from the finest ingredients. Each morsel is carefully prepared to delight even the most discerning palate.
Grimwald's Gourmet Ghoul Treats, the finest feast for all you freaks. Serve them up and watch them rave. The taste that'll send you to the grave.
Whether it's a platter of bone marrow pate or a slice of blood pudding, Grimwald's Gourmet Ghoul Treats will have your guests screaming for more. Remember, nothing says luxury like Grimwald's, because in the end, we all end up on the menu.
Welcome back, you night dwellers, to Spooky Radio WHLW, where the airwaves are as dark and twisted as the tales we tell. I hope you're all strapped in, because we're diving right back into the eerie with a track that speaks to the weight of inheritance. More than just wealth. Sometimes it's a burden, a curse even. This is Legacy Curse. Let it haunt you.
Grandfather's mansion vast and old, secrets and shadows, tales left untold. Wealth those like birds, lasting the pain, dark legacy, bound with a day. Each heir must follow, maintain the curse, fail and destiny's words. Secrets, hush, whispers, fake, legacy takes, wealth and pain under the surname. Arrangements kept in blackened rooms, passages echo, families grow. Each generation must bear the oath or face a hunting foe. Secrets, hush, whispers, fake, legacy takes, wealth and pain under the same. Night the heart. Secrets, hush, whispers, fake, legacy takes, wealth and pain under the surname.
Ah, Legacy Curse, a tune that reminds us all that what we leave behind might just come back to bite us. Quite literally in some cases. It's funny, isn't it? How greed can be like an endless hunger, never satisfied, always gnawing at the edges of your soul. Speaking of hunger, our next tale takes that metaphor to a whole new level. Picture this, a grand, opulent dining room, chandeliers sparkling above, silver platters being served to the most elite of guests. But what's on those platters? Well, let's just say it's not your typical gourmet fare. This story is one of indulgence gone horribly wrong, of appetites that can never be sated. Here's The Dinner.
The ballroom glistened with opulence, every surface shimmering under the soft glow of golden chandeliers. The walls were adorned with tapestries woven with threads of silver and gold, depicting scenes of mythic hunts and grand conquests. The floor, a mosaic of rare marbles, gleamed like polished jewels, reflecting the splendor of the evening. The guests, an assembly of the world's most powerful and wealthy, moved with the grace and ease of those accustomed to absolute luxury. Dressed in silks, velvet, and tailored suits, they were draped in diamonds and pearls, each more extravagant than the last. Conversations hummed with the low, velvety tones of people who had long forgotten the meaning of want. Here, in this secluded mansion on the outskirts of the city, they gathered annually to celebrate their dominion over all things. At the center of the room stood an enormous banquet table, its length almost absurd in its grandeur. It was set with the finest china, each plate edged with gold leaf and cutlery that sparkled with encrusted gemstones. Crystal goblets filled with deep crimson wine caught the light and threw it back in ruby shards. The first course arrived on silver platters carried by a procession of silent, impeccably dressed waitstaff. The dishes were announced with great ceremony, each more elaborate and decadent than the last. "Tonight we begin with a delicate tartare," the head butler intoned, his voice carrying the weight of tradition. "Freshly prepared, seasoned with rare herbs and served atop a bed of microgreens." The guests leaned in, eager to taste the first bite of the evening's indulgences. The tartare, glistening with a rich, deep red hue, was presented with an artistry that could only be described as divine. Knives slid into the meat with ease, revealing its perfect tenderness. The flavor was exquisite, earthy, rich, and just a touch metallic. "Exquisite," murmured a woman draped in an emerald gown, her voice soft with pleasure. "So fresh, so alive?" Her companion, a man with a sharp, predatory smile, nodded in agreement, savoring each bite. "Indeed, there's something about it that feels primal." The courses continued, each more sumptuous and more disturbing than the last. There were roasted ribs, their bones polished to a gleaming white, served with a glaze so sweet it masked the subtle tang of iron beneath. There was a stew, thick and hearty, the meat within it so tender it fell apart at the slightest touch. The aromas that filled the room were intoxicating, a heady mix of herbs, spices, and something else, something more. As the evening wore on, the guests became more animated, their conversation flowing as freely as the wine. They spoke of stocks and mergers, of art and politics, their words punctuated by the soft clinking of forks and knives against china. But beneath the veneer of polite conversation, there was a hunger, a deep, insatiable hunger, that grew with each passing course. Finally, with the air thick with anticipation, the pièce de résistance was unveiled. The room fell into a reverent hush as a grand centerpiece was wheeled into the center of the banquet hall. Draped in a gleaming white cloth, it commanded the attention of all present. With a dramatic flourish, the butler removed the covering, revealing the dish beneath, a body artfully arranged in a pose of elegant repose, its limbs delicately entwined as if in a graceful dance. The flesh, pale and glistening, had been meticulously prepared, each muscle carved to perfection, revealing the tender meat beneath. The head was tilted slightly, as if in contemplation, a serene smile playing upon its lips. The guests gasped in unison, their eyes wide with admiration. "Such beauty," one whispered, her voice thick with awe. "It's almost too beautiful to eat." "Almost," another guest murmured, a sly smile tugging at the corner of his mouth as he reached for his knife. "But only almost." The butler began to carve, his movements precise and practiced, revealing layer upon layer of exquisitely prepared meat. The guests leaned forward, eager to taste this final, most decadent course. Each slice was delicate, tender, and imbued with a richness that spoke of a life well lived, if abruptly ended. As the first bites were taken, a low murmur of satisfaction spread through the room. The taste was beyond anything they had experienced, a complex blend of flavors that lingered on the palate, at once familiar and yet utterly foreign. It's as if one can taste the essence of life itself, one guest remarked, his voice hushed with reverence. Every joy, every sorrow, captured in a single bite. Indeed, another replied, savoring the moment, a fitting tribute to those who have given so much.
And there you have it, folks. A feast unlike any other, where the price of a meal is more than just a monetary transaction. The elite may dine in luxury, and in the end, they'll all pay the price. Or rather, we will. Now, if by chance we've got any millionaires out there tuning in tonight, I just want to say, no offense, my dear wealthy friends, but if you find yourself feeling a little uneasy, maybe it's time to take a good, long look in the mirror. After all, it only stings if there's a bit of truth to it, right? Just something to think about as you count your blessings. Now, if that tale didn't chill you to the bone, I don't know what will. But there's always more where that came from. Up next, we've got a song that'll tingle your vengeful bone in the most satisfying of ways. This is You'll Pay the Price. But before we dive into that, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a comment, and give us a thumbs up. We love hearing from our spooky community. It's what keeps the shadows alive here at Spooky Radio. Now let's keep the haunting melodies going.
Gold in your pockets, it won't buy your soul. It's heavy and burdensome, taking its toll. Dark shadows follow you, debts left unpaid. The reaper's just waiting, your dues to be weighed. When the darkness surrounds you, no place left to hide. The wealth that you gather can't cross the divide. In the dead of night, when you're all alone, riches mean nothing when you stand at the throne. You'll pay the price, you'll pay the price in the dead of night when you're all alone. Riches mean nothing when you stand at the throne. You'll pay the price, you'll pay the price. The mansion, the treasures, they will fade away. No hearse with a trailer, no riches to stay. When life's final ledger is called up above, it's the poor who'll find solace in eternal love. The weight of your greed and the lives that you've scarred, there's a reckoning coming, the way will be hard. In the dead of night when you're all alone, riches mean nothing when you stand at the throne. You pay the price, you pay the price. Redemption in gold or the coin you hold. It's your soul that's the treasure when the story's been told.
You'll Pay the Price, a tune that serves as a chilling reminder that in this world, every choice has its consequences, especially when greed is involved. Now, dear listeners, as the midnight hour draws near, I must say we're slowly winding down tonight's episode of Spooky Radio WHLW. But fear not, we got one more haunting melody to leave you with. Before we dive into our final track, I just want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for tuning in tonight. It's truly my biggest pleasure to spend these dark, twisted hours with you, weaving tales and spinning tunes that keep the eerie vibes alive. Without you, our ghoulish little community wouldn't be the same. So let's savor this last morsel of the night. Here's The Feast, a track that perfectly encapsulates the macabre indulgence we've explored tonight. Enjoy, if you dare.
Oh, the caviar, rich and bizarre, it's muscle of the peasant served in a jar, with side of ribs, all cooked with flair from the common folks who never went far.
There They're feasting with no care on dishes rare and unfair. Their laughter fills the air at the poor man's despair.
Next, the soup that's so thick, it's peasant bones that do the trick. With marrow rich they sip and lick, unaware of those who are sick. They're feasting with no care on dishes rare and unfair. Their laughter fills the air at the poor man's despair. Dining hall so grand, they waltz and dance hand in hand, while outside the poor just stand, eyes hollow, they don't understand.
They're feasting with no care on dishes rare and unfair. Their laughter fills the air at the poor man's despair.
Well, my fiendish friends, that was The Feast, a delectable finish to our night of ghoulish tales and spine-chilling tunes. You know, it's been a wild ride through the darkest corners of wealth and power, where the rich dine on more than just fine food. Sometimes they feast on the very soul of humanity. As the shadows lengthen and the night grows quiet, it's time for me to take my leave. But don't worry, the eerie echoes of tonight's episode will linger on, just like the ghostly whispers in an old, forgotten mansion. Until next time, my spooky companions, keep the chills close and the light dim. This is Jack Lantern, signing off from Spooky Radio WHLW, where the night is always young and the stories are always dark. Sleep tight if you can.
When the moon is high and the stars are bright, gather round, it's Halloween night. Cozy up, friends, for some spooky delight, swinging through the Halloween night. Ghosts and goblins, all in fun, with a vintage swing, the night's begun. Tap your feet and join the fright in our swinging Halloween night.